read some of the things that, he still has probably several decades worth of life left in him that he's going to add to this list, but let me just account for a few things so far. He's a proud father of 6 and understands the connection of parenting with prayer. He was the oldest of 3 himself, and born and raised in Alabama and Mississippi until he was 16, and then he moved to Tucson. He graduated from the St. Louis University School of Medicine, specialized in pediatrics. Besides his personal practice, he was a teaching professor at several national and international institutions. He's written over 100 professional publications and has contributed to 6 books. Blaise practiced pediatric medicine in the Bitterroot Valley from 1995 to 2010 and founded the nonprofit South Valley Children and Family Clinic. He co-founded the Quantum Group of the Bitterroot, Jason's part of, in 2017 to share the relevance and the knowledge of the highly significant aspect of science and metaphysics with others, and especially seniors and high school students, written especially for high school kids in Hamilton. Those of us who have been around for a while with the Center for Spiritual Living and now the Center for Spiritual Life, remember that we use the South Valley Children and Family Center for about a year and a half, shared the facility on Sunday with Blaise and his marvelous work there. It was a great association and a pleasure to be there while we were together. So the guy is amazing, and his talk is going to be the power of fathers and the power of prayer. Please help me welcome Blaise Favara.
You hear me?
Yeah.
So say Peter Piper,
Digital. When I was asked to, given this invitation, I was floored. But I'm honored to be here today. And I've probably given 1,000 talks in my career or more, usually with PowerPoint. And when I mentioned that today, there was silence on the other end of the phone. And so this is going to be kind of an ad lib. First of all, I want to talk to you about fathers. I'm one, and I'm not a model father. I was one of these fathers who viewed my role as go to work and leave the raising of the kids to mom. And it was not the best, but I'm working on a make-up time now with my daughters and my son.
Thanks,
I have
Dad.
5 daughters and 1 son, and a lovely wife over there. I won't be talking to you about God the Father. We all know about God the Father, and suffice it to say that we all know Him, we count on His love and forgiveness, and it's important in our lives. I'll tell you some things about fathers that many of you probably don't know, because they come from the perspective of a pediatric person, pediatrician, pediatric pathologist, and so I'll give you an insight that's kind of related to that background. And then I'll throw in my two cents worth of the spiritual solutions to life challenges. So first of all, about fathers. There'll be some science in here, but hopefully it's not going to be too heavy. All of human development is really a miracle, but the development of the brain is really the emperor of them all. The brain coordinates all the development of everything else, and in itself is really a miracle. There are several phases of brain development that we recognize. The one we'll be talking about today is the first stage, and this starts at conception, not after birth. It starts at conception. And that goes on until you're about 2 or 3. And then, the brain is doing what it does. And then at about 10 years of age, it undergoes another change. And this is called the teenage brain. And those of you who are parents know what that's like. It's not only a miracle, but it's a challenge. And that goes on from about 10 to about 25. And the brain is adjusting to things. The frontal lobe is developing so that decisions can be made rationally. And a lot of other things that go on. And if you test teenagers, is this nice or is this bad? They'll say it's bad and you know it's nice. So they have a whole different perspective. But that maturity is ongoing till about 25. And then for others in this room, so if you can't hear me or don't understand me, throw something or raise your hand, and I'll adjust this. The brain is constantly developing new brain cells. It's constantly developing new connections. And it begins at conception. And fathers have a real role in this. And I want to take the ideal pregnancy where there's a woman who is pregnant and her spouse, the father, is there supporting her. And that's the ideal. Unfortunately, we don't have the ideal all the time. It begins really with fertilization, and the mother contributes an X chromosome. She has 2 of them. And the father contributes either an X or a Y. And so that determines the sex of the baby. And so the father's got a real say-so. And that may be the last time the father has anything to say. But it happens. I want to mention just something about kind of a mistake in fathering. One night I got a call at 10 o'clock at night. Dr. Favara, my son has an ear infection. Shall I take him to the emergency room? No, I'll meet you at the office. So I went to the office, and in walked Seth. I'll never forget his name. And Seth's holding his ear. Dr. Favara, I have an erection. So later, after the mood settled, I asked Mother where this came from, and she said, well, Dad's been talking to him about sexual development, and he got it mixed up. So sometimes dads can make mistakes. Anyway, I want to emphasize that those 40 weeks of pregnancy are really critical, and it's a very busy time for fathers and obviously for mothers. And we now know that the most significant influence of development is the environment. It's the environment in which pregnancy occurs, in which pregnancy progresses. It's not your DNA, it's not the chemicals, it's the environment. And the environment should be created by the father. And that environment should be one of love, security, and caring. And I use the term, the mother is the princess of pregnancy and the dad is the king who's going to watch over it. So In the usual pregnancy, we have signs of neurodevelopment, within a month of conception. Before people not even know she's pregnant often. The brain is already developing. And I'll throw in some gee whiz stuff here, which astounded me. There are 100 billion neurons present in your brain when you're born. 100 billion. That's a lot. And most of those are formed in the first 5 months of life, 5 months after conception. And I don't have any idea how they derive this figure, but they say 250,000 neurons are formed per minute at one stage of pregnancy. So that's a heap of brain cells. Each of those 100 billion brain cells have hookups to maybe 15,000 other neurons. So you got 100 billion, and then you got all of these hookups with other neurons. So and those neurons are going to fire 10 to 100 times per second. So it's a busy process. So here's some things. The fetus can taste and smell by 15 weeks after conception. Can hear 20 weeks after conception. Respond to extrauterine sounds 22 weeks after conception. And respond to touch within 23 weeks after conception. Now the hearing thing is really critical, and I'm a big fan of music, as you heard about the prayer. And incidentally, that rendition ranks way up there by you too. So anyway, but hearing, if during pregnancy you play music, and it's not hard rock stuff, it could be classical, it could be the prayer, it could be any of the music that most of us like. And then when the baby's born, they've done studies to show that if you play a different kind of music, the baby doesn't respond to it. But if you play the same kind of music you played before the baby was born, the baby responds. And that hearing of that sound is there about 20 weeks. Now, I've tossed in the term epigenetics along the way here, and many of you know what that is, but I just want to emphasize that it's the thing in genetic research today. DNA is not the kingpin anymore. The environment turns on genes without turning on or changing the DNA. And that environment during pregnancy is most often influenced by the father. So the father's role through epigenetics is just huge. It's very likely that this process of epigenetics, where the genes are turned on without the DNA, it's probably mediated through some quantum theory-based thing, which I don't understand, and I won't try to spill it to you. So the bottom line is that those 40 weeks before birth are the important ones, and the environment is a critical player in that. And the father has a very important part in that. Of course, the father's influence on the baby goes beyond pregnancy, because lifetime, and certainly the first few years of life. So let me tell you a story. And this, I brought a little book to remind me who I am. I wrote a little book of my professional career, and just for me, and for people I don't like. And so when I was at Children's in Boston, I was the chief resident in pathology, and in pathology we had to be in the hospital till 10 o'clock at night, every third night. That was our call schedule. So I'm on call this night, and about 4 in the afternoon, we got a call saying that President Kennedy's baby, Patrick Bouvier, who had been transferred up from Cape Cod to the intensive care unit of the Children's, had died. And they had signed the permit for an autopsy for the following day. But the president was coming to visit his son that evening. So the baby died about 3, and the president came about 10 o'clock. And that was quite an enlightening time for me. You look out the back door of the back windows of Children's on the alley between it and the Brigham Hospital, and about 4 old cars, 1930 model cars, drove up, and out comes these huge Secret Service guys and the president. So he comes in with this entourage, and the ladies at Children's had set up our library in the pathology department for the viewing room, and put beautiful, the library had never looked so great, but it was set up for this occasion. And so the Secret Service guys went in and they had inspected everything and looked under every carpet and whatever. And so finally the president goes into the room where the baby is in the crib, and to visit with his baby. Now Jackie couldn't come up from Cape Cod because she was immediately postpartum, or at least 2 days, and it was not scheduled to travel. And so the president came to be with his baby for the first and last time. And so about maybe an hour after the president went in to be with his son, my mentor, Gordon Valder, said, he's been in there a long time. Blaise, would you go and check on him? And so I went in, and so here's this powerful man in the world crying over his son. And so I apologized for my intrusion. He apologized for his crying, and I pledged not to tell any Republican. That's not true. My wife is always reminding me I should tell the truth. And I keep telling her that I always tell some version of the truth. Anyway, but that is true, the story. So here's the present. So I'll leave the father for a moment here and go on to spiritual solutions of life challenges. And when I thought about that, prayer has got to be the number one. And I know nothing as powerful as prayer. When you're training as a pediatric pathologist, which I trained early on, you're trained to do autopsies on babies, on children. And very early I developed a modus operandi where when I had an autopsy to do, I would review the chart. And I would spend maybe 2 minutes in prayer. And I would pray that the autopsy reveals something useful to the living, and that it was done professionally. And that prayer was answered. In the nearly 100 papers I wrote in medical journals, over half of them were based on the information I found in autopsy. So it was a good way to get my mind set and to get the most out of that procedure. Now let me tell you about Harvard prayer. When you're at Children's in Boston, you're a Harvard person. So one day, Gordon, my mentor, said, Blaise, can you go to the Mass General to a meeting for me on prayer? And I said, well, I thought about, well, maybe he figures I need it, so I ought to go. So I went to this meeting on prayer, and there were 5 people from the School of Divinity and an equal number from intensive care, the Mass General, and they wanted to do research on the effectiveness of prayer. And so the idea was they're going to pray for somebody, or have somebody pray for somebody intensely, and now we're going to prove it does any good. So we met for 2 hours, and I went back for the 2 other meetings. No way could they come up with a triple-blind study to determine the effectiveness of prayer. It just didn't work. So when I quit going, Gordon went two more, and they couldn't come up with anything. And this has been noted along the way. And in a 209 paper in the Indian Journal of Psychiatry, they talked about this issue, prayer. How can we study prayer? And they listed all the problems with it. Does the person being prayed for have to know they're being prayed for? Does the person being prayed for have to know who is praying for them? Does the person praying for somebody have to know all these things? You know, it just gets me. And the Indian thing, I don't know how many of these people were Christians, atheists, or what have you, but they pointed out one thing that I found noteworthy. It said that you shouldn't put prayer to the scientific test at all. Deuteronomy 6:16 says, you shall not put the Lord your God to the test. So forget it. But the bottom line is there have been a lot of studies on prayer, and some have shown effectiveness, no effectiveness. Yet some have been worsened by prayer. So it's not a subject that's easily studied scientifically. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. And we know we pray, we don't understand how it works. Dave said it always works. And Dave knows everything. So, and I think importantly with prayer is it may be answered, but you don't recognize it. And it may not be answered the way you want it. We're always humanizing God. And that's counterproductive. So I'm an advocate of prayer. I don't understand it any more than I understand quantum theory, but I believe in quantum theory and I believe in prayer. And then I want to again emphasize on this special day that fathers are really vital. And I don't know what we can do in our world to make every pregnancy associated with the father. But it's badly needed. So please promote being a good father. Deal with the spiritual solutions through prayer, and the quantum theory will take care of itself. Thank you very much.